Hi, I'm Becky Taylor. I'm CEO and co-founder at Tech Returners.
Hi, I'm Head Staff, co-founder of Street Group.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for having us here today, Heather. Really wanted to have a conversation with you and explore just in terms of how the partnerships come about and what you're hoping to get out of the partnership with Tech Returners. But I want to start at a bit of a more holistic level and find out why diversity and inclusion is so important to the Street Group.
I think for multiple reasons, really. Obviously, as a female founder, I set up the business with my brother, Tom, who's also a gay man. So diversity and inclusion, I think, is personally very important to both of us. So for personal reasons, we've always grown the business with a huge focus on it. But I think commercially as well, it makes a lot of sense. And we are big believers that in diversity of thought, we're very, very innovative as a company. And that is definitely one of our USPs. And it's what keeps us out of the competition, naturally. And we very firmly believe that the more diverse our team is, the more innovative we are, the more innovative ideas we create, the more we understand, our market. So it's just very personally and commercially important to us.
And has that evolved over time, or has it always been at the forefront when you and your brother set up the business?
I'd say it's always been there. Me and Tom, we always put a focus on culture right from the early days. We used to call them our values, and then they've sort of morphed into our operating principles, which we split into who we are and how we work. And one of those is diversity is non-negotiable. So we've got it sort of written into our operating principles. And they aren't just, wishy-washy things that are printed out and put on a poster. Everybody across the whole organisation knows them, because when it comes to their performance review at the end of the year, they're graded against that sort of thing. So, little things like building that in makes sure that it is at the forefront of everybody's mind. And if they're not, they know that they'll be picked up on that. And after a while, that sort of culture becomes self-policing. And I think if somebody joined and they weren't inclusive, it would really show, and it would sort of be managed pretty quickly. We actually did an internal survey pretty recently, and 96% of people at Street Group said that they felt basically safe and secure to be themselves. So I think that's pretty
amazing.
high.
That's amazing. And it's music to my ears that they're not just words, statements that are on walls. The amount of organisations you walk into and they're just actually just words on walls and not actually intrinsic to what they do and believe in on a day-to-day basis. You talked about doing it in terms of from a review process, but is it part of your recruitment onboarding process as well?
It is, yes. Great question. So we actually use it very heavily in recruitment, because we think we share those things up front and say, this is who we are as a company and these are the types of people that we're looking for. And if you don't think this is you, that's absolutely fine. But I think it's important to share that up front so they know the type of company that they're joining. So things like one of them is moving quickly, and actually if they'd rather have a sort of slower environment, that we're probably not for them. So we share them in the recruitment process. Laura, our head of people, who's absolutely brilliant, makes sure that we build in questions to test this sort of thing in the interview process. We also do, or Laura should definitely take all the credit for this, but things like anonymised names. So when you get the CVs, it strips it out to blue octopus, so you don't know if it's a male, female, any background information. And then we also make sure in the interview process that anybody that interviews in the first round doesn't pass on or talk to the people that interview in the second round, so there can be no passing of any subconscious bias or anything like that. So we do actively make sure that is threaded throughout our DNA in terms of recruitment. And then obviously when somebody starts, it's in the onboarding process that we get to know our operating principles and how we work and what's important to us as a company, really.
And I love it how you sort of reframed the language around operating principles. It's, the core values as being, a renowned topic area for values, but actually you're bringing it one step further of actually it's operating. So it's what you do on a day-to-day basis. So I really like that idea. And I love the fact that you've got moving fast, having experience of working in so many startup scale-ups. That's definitely very important to be clear with expectations for people coming into the organisation.
It is, and I think you've got to be honest with them and make sure it's the right role. And if they don't want that sort of environment, then it's much better to say it up front and figure that out than get somebody in role and think, actually, this isn't the role for you. And I can't take the credit on operating principles. We totally stole it from Stripe. But we did think that, for us, we had values and it was our values. And then me and Tom just thought, actually, that's not the right word for us. And we just morphed it into operating principles. So we went a little bit more granular with it.
No, I love it. Yeah. So you've talked a bit about why diversity and inclusion is so important. So it's really interesting for me to know why then invest in the Tech Returners TR4 program. What sort of was your purpose, your why of actually engaging with ourselves?
I think it's a brilliant concept. I mean, as somebody who, I just had a child recently, and again, talking about Laura, thanks, so did Laura. We were two good examples of people who've taken a break, and it is hard, or it can be hard, to come back to whatever role. And I think diversity is so important on the tech side. And it doesn't matter whether you've taken a break for, maternity, paternity, as a carer, whatever the reason. What a great concept to help people come back to the workforce after doing that. And obviously I've just gone into why diversity is important for us. And I think this helps with that, particularly on the tech side, to make sure that we do maintain as much diversity of thought and of backgrounds and of everything, age, gender, as possible. And I think the pool of candidates that this program supports helps us do that.
Yeah, definitely. And being a new parent yourself and parent myself, you understand in terms of all those wealth of transferable skills that you've now acquired.
This is a very good point. I do believe that. I think you learn so much more by taking a different break. So I think you do get lots of different strengths and skills that you wouldn't have had before taking a break, and it shouldn't be seen as a weakness. And I think, doing this and making sure that people feel really confident coming back is just fantastic.
I think children have been such a valuable lesson in my life that, the skills that I've learned in terms of communication, in terms of negotiation, mediation is just phenomenal, because I don't think you could actually get that real life experience in many organisations that you do with actually having children. So I do think it brings you so much more added value to an organisation. And I read an article once that any startup or scale up would look to hire a parent over, somebody that has had that experience around actually that growth of an individual as well. Because
It's true. You learn so much. I always say, as a founder, I'm constantly in learning mode, and as a parent, you're constantly in learning mode. And one of the things that we always look for is people with a growth mindset. I think as a parent, you sort of have to be. Yeah. But that, again, is something that we test for in our interview process. So,
and I love the growth mindset. I first came aware of it, through school, actually. So my 11-year-old son does it at school around the growth mindset. And then when I started to look into it a little bit more, I understood, obviously, there's such benefit of having it, at all ages and in terms of all situations. And I just think it's just something great to understand, as well as growth mindset potential of that individual as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we ask interview questions to get at that, and because part of the fabric of our company culture is we want to promote self-learning and development. So everybody has an L&D budget every year that they can spend how they want. And I think people that go on this course are naturally going to sort of fit in that category anyway, because they're doing something that I think is brave. I think it's intense. The type of people that it's going to attract is naturally going to do well in a company like ours.
What do you think the myths and conceptions of a returner are, in terms of your experience?
I think probably that it's just women who've had children. I think there are so many reasons. I mean, with a company of our size, we've seen so many different types of people take career breaks for many different reasons. And I think what we're seeing more and more now, which I think is fantastic, by the way, is men taking paternity leave and extended paternity leave and shared parental leave, which I'm a big advocate for, because there's no way I would have been able to manage if my husband hadn't also taken shared parental leave and we shared the duties equally. So I think that's probably a bit of a misconception, but it's also, you might take a break to be a carer. I'm sure there's a million different reasons why you might take a break. And I think careers aren't straight lines anymore. They're wiggly lines, and our head of people, again, Laura, she should probably be sat here, does a great talk about your squiggly career. And I think getting used to that, and that's the world that we're in, is pretty relevant, actually.
So just let me touch on that point around your husband taking shared parental leave. It's, it isn't unfortunately the norm at the moment, or yet, as in the growth mindset word. So what was the perception of him taking shared parental leave within his organisation?
Well, I think he was very lucky in that he was working for one of the big four, KPMG at the time, who were very, very supportive of him doing it, which I think is fantastic to begin with. I also think he is a very strong character in himself. So he wasn't worried about, how other men might perceive him, because he's very confident guy. And I think it's interesting because the more senior a man is, and the more professional he is, the more likely he is to take shared parental leave. So I think we need to get it as the norm that this is, normal. More and more men can do it and not feel embarrassed to do it, or that they can't ask, because I think a lot of employers are more supportive than people think. And I think he also got a lot of supportive messages from colleagues, so other men that were doing it, and a lot of other women as well who were really self-conscious about taking time out of their career, but felt less self-conscious because their male peer was doing it at the same time.
And that's such an important thing to focus on, about being a role model and also being an ally, because by him standing out and saying, yes, I'm going to do that, has inspired probably other people to maybe consider it themselves or even take it forward. So it's so important to have those allies as well, in the industry as well.
Yeah, I'm very lucky that he was very brave in doing it and didn't think twice, and his employer was so supportive of it. So yeah.
Fantastic. We see it from a Tech Returners perspective that there is so many different situations that people have gone through in terms of whether that's ill health, parenting, in terms of caring responsibilities, sabbaticals, unfortunately being affected by the pandemic and, from recent events. And I just think it's being aware that there's people from various backgrounds and have various transferable skills that can bring that added value into your organisation. But let's not forget, the value of a returner as well is in terms of them having previous years of experience. And I think sometimes that's forgotten, that just because they've had a career break doesn't necessarily mean that they've lost all that industry knowledge, they've lost all those experiences. So it's like added value again to what they can bring to an organisation.
Exactly. I think they've got tons of experience in the field that we're looking for anyway. Then they get extra skill sets. And again, if they're the type of people to do this intense course, they're going to get a ton more knowledge. So we get all the background experience that they've already got, extra transferable skills, and new tech knowledge as well, which is perfect.
And that you get, and I still find it very surprising when kind of returners come through our recruitment pipeline. And for an example, there's a woman that's just gone on one of our programs that has got over 15 years experience as a team manager at some of the very high profile Manchester tech-based companies, but she's had maternity leave for a period of time but can't go back into a traditional method. And I just find it fascinating that people don't see into the gap and actually see the amount of experience that she has, because that doesn't go away. Just because you have a gap doesn't mean that your experience goes away. And I think companies need to understand that as well. And that's where we need companies like yourself that are very forward thinking in that respect too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are you looking for from the TR4 program? What do you feel that it's going to bring to your organisation in terms of value?
I think for us, it's that different pool of candidates that, by the very fact that they're on the programme, are already exhibiting a lot of the characteristics that we would look for. Self-starter, growth mindset, and that pool of talent, I think, is a slightly different pool than the more common ones that we fish in. And diversity for us as a business is so important. We know it's one of our USPs. I think if you look across prop tech as a whole, or the property industry, it is dominated by certain people, whereas if you look at our business, we're incredibly diverse. And I think we need to maintain that, and we need to focus on it, and it needs to be a conscious thing that we do. And this, for us, actually supports that, because I think we get different type of people coming through.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think when we speak to organisations, we're almost seen like as a complement to what you're doing already. It's not that we're doing it for you, we're just complementing all the diversity and inclusion efforts or strategies, plans that you're already doing. But we can just obviously target a different candidate pool that then can supplement and can support in terms of your diversity already in your organisation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's brilliant, and it does fit very nicely with what we're doing already.
Fantastic. So why Tech Returners? Did you look at any other partners, or what stood out for you in that context?
You guys have got a very, very good reputation in Manchester in particular. So we sort of knew about you already. The reviews and from other companies that have done it has always been incredibly positive. So for us, it was very much a natural go-to, really. We didn't actually consider any other schemes.
So thank you, Heather, for joining me on this conversation. And it's been fascinating learning more about Street Group and their diversity and inclusion initiatives. And we're really excited about the partnership over the next couple of months.
As are we. Thank you for having me.
And if you would like to know more about the Tech Returners TR4 programs, please do visit our website.